Hello, and welcome to Chaos to Clarity, the podcast that's your compass to navigate the exciting world of service-based businesses. If you're a determined woman in your current business adventure, striving to conquer the chaos and build your empire, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Maggie, your go-to business bestie and chaos navigator. I've spent nearly 2 decades in the service-based industry, building a photography business, a yoga studio, and now a thriving coaching practice. I've cracked the code to consistent income without all the chaos and noise. So get ready to increase your business growth, connect with your ideal clients, and find ease in both business and in life. It's time to turn your frustrations into inspiration and your chaos into clarity. So go ahead and grab your coffee, a pen and paper, and let's dive into the journey of building your dream service-based business together. Are you ready? Let's go. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie. I am your business bestie and your Chaos to Clarity coach. And today I have with me Rebecca Nesbit, and I am so excited for you all to meet her. So Rebecca, go ahead and tell us who you are, what you do, and how long you've been in business.
Oh, I love this. I feel like this is a really deep question to start with. Like, tell me everything
Tell me
about
everything.
you.
I'm ready.
All the things. I have my notepad and let's go. So, like you said, my name is Rebecca Nesbit and I started my business. Oh my gosh. I started out in business a few years back, probably 2016, I want to say. I started out in network marketing and I did that for a number of years. And then I fell out of network marketing because it didn't align with me. I don't think there's anything wrong or bad. I think network marketing is an amazing industry. I think it's got a lot of support and it's probably not given the love that it deserves, that's for sure. But it didn't resonate with me anymore. I was in health. So I was really invested in the nutrition side and I got myself into a really poor place with health and have suffered with chronic pain since I was 16. So it was a lot of compounding stuff that got me to the point where I thought, do you know, this isn't for me anymore. This isn't making a positive change in my life. And if I'm not making a positive change in my life, I can't make a positive change in anyone else's life. So then I transitioned into, I wanted to be a yoga teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So Maggie and I share that.
Yeah.
So I did my yoga teacher training and I was like, I'm going to travel the world and teach yoga. And then there was this little thing called the pandemic, which was a problem for wanting to travel the world and teach yoga. So I did a little bit of yoga online during the pandemic, but my days were super long. I was working in 9 to 5, and then Saturdays and Sundays, I was pretty much just recording 9 to 10 classes as well as delivering some courses too. So that was a lot and for not a lot of financial gain. So I didn't really have the finances to support me leaving my job. So that was a really tiring period because before that, I'd been working my 9 to 5 and running a business, which was also all the shades of drama because I was at university and I was learning to be a careers coach. So I have a postgrad in careers guidance and development. That's where I started off in coaching. But essentially, within the pandemic, I think, like some people, I don't want to say most people or many people, but some people that I've definitely resonated with this on is I did something for myself. So I did a life coaching course for myself. I just wanted someone else to coach me and to tell me how to fix my life
Mm-hmm.
because I was trying to run this business. It hadn't been working for years. I started this new business that also wasn't working. And I was just like, well, I am the anti-hero. At the time I didn't know, but I was the problem. It was me. And I was like, if I'm the problem, I'm the solution. So I have to figure this out. So I did a life coaching course, which led on to their upgrade of the next package to teach you to be a life coach. And I thought, well, I've been coaching for years. So I started coaching in 2014 in a careers office. So I'd been coaching for a long time. And I thought, this isn't much different. And this is actually solving a little bit of my pain that I had in careers guidance at the time. Because what I found was people didn't always need a careers coach. They needed someone that was going to go that little bit deeper with them. And the best career transformations I got with people were the ones that actually started to change like their confidence. They would come more regularly and they would see me more often, and they would experience these big shifts because they would get something out that was holding them back, and then they'd be able to step into that career that they really wanted. And I just thought that was where all the juice was. Like, I was so excited by that. I then went to work in a different city, and it was amazing because I got to do more of that work. I worked a lot with young people in social care. So that was so interesting for me. But when I had gone through this process in the pandemic, what I think I realized was I was becoming more aware that I was sitting on one side of the desk or the Zoom screen saying, this is what you should do with your life, because this is what you're telling me you want to do. So go and do it. And then I was sitting there thinking, I don't really love what I'm doing. I just want to travel and have that freedom to travel the world and make money along the way so that I can have this like jet set lifestyle. So I wasn't really being congruent with my own word. And whenever I make that recognition, it took a long time the first time, but whenever I realize that now, I'm like, oh, damn. I'm like, you said that you weren't going to do this. So I'm very like, if I recognize I have a congruence problem, which is really useful, because if I just point out a congruence problem, then I'm like, I will solve the problem, because I don't ever want to be not in alignment with my word. So what I realized in the pandemic is that I wasn't being in alignment, and that was really problematic. So I went into coaching. I went to this next level, and I had a conversation with my coach because I was still doing the yoga at the time. And she was like, how much are you charging for yoga? And I was like, £7.
Not enough.
And she was like, what? And I was like, £7. She was like, £7 a session. Like, it was a phone call, and I swear the phone was like, it like moved on its own. You know, when you see it in a cartoon, you can see the speed through it. That's what it was like.
And it was like a Howler message in Harry Potter.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, it was. And it was just like a moment where she was like, stop doing that or charge a lot more. And I was like, to charge more, what would one need to do? And she was like, I really don't understand why you're not coaching. So I spoke to my company at the time that I was working for, and they said they didn't see any parallels between the two things. Now, I think that was wrong of them, but it was really helpful for me at the time. So thank you. I was with an amazing company. And I think this is something that's different from a story that you've shared with me before, Maggie, about your past employment and about not loving it. The difference was that I really did love my job. And I think this is something that people probably need to hear more, because a lot of the time it's like, I hated my job, I became an entrepreneur. I really loved my job. I could have stayed in my job for a really long time. I love the kids that I worked with. I loved the adults that I worked with. I got to do a lot of redundancy work for oil and gas, which was really interesting. And I was always given opportunities to grow and learn. And I worked with a really great company, and I worked with really, really nice people. I worked with people that wanted to support people to be the best they could be. Like, I was in a really great position, but there was this piece of me that was like, this is not the life you want though.
Yeah.
And that was the piece that kept getting louder and louder and louder, that allowed me to make that transition and it feel really seamless. And it wasn't like a line in the sand where one day I just decided. It was one day I had enough clients that were coming to me on renewal, that had just paid, that were going to pay again. And I was like, cool, you want me to go back to the office? I don't. I'm going to leave. That's fine. And that was like this beautiful impasse. Like, there was no dramatic story there. So then I went into coaching, and I have been coaching ever since. But more recently, I've transitioned out of, I was doing a lot of high ticket one-to-one work, which I love. I think that one-to-one work is such huge transformation. Like, it's the biggest gift to witness, because quite often when we're in a group, we can get lost. So I totally understand that. But if we want to be again in alignment with, there's a part of me that's like not aligned, there's a part that's not congruent, is being really honest. Myself and my husband would love to start trying for a family in the next few years. And the velocity of one-to-one work that I was doing, and the amount of outreach that I had to pour into getting that work, and doing those sales calls. And yes, I could have streamlined that service and focused on it for 2 to 4 years, but that doesn't discount the fact that I would have on average like between 10 and 20 clients. And if that's the case, that's 10 to 20 working hours, right, alongside, and we've spoken about this before privately, alongside the prep that you do, alongside the aftercare that you do, alongside creating anything that it is that they need, because it's one-to-one and it's bespoke, and that's why people pay for one-to-one and they pay high ticket, is because that's what they want. So I've taken my foot off the gas with that, and I do accept new clients and I have my renewal clients, but my energy is so much more focused on community, because if I was to go way back, where my entrepreneurship journey really started was because I was really freaking lonely. I didn't have, and I think this is really hard as an adult, is to make friends. I didn't have a network of friends. The work I did have, because I had like acquaintances, people I would go out and drink with, because I came from Scotland. I live in Texas now, but I came from Scotland where drinking culture is really big. They weren't doing the kinds of things that I wanted to be doing. And if I'm honest, the things I wanted to be doing were the things that I saw people doing on Instagram, which was like, go to Bali, or like go to conferences together, or go and just like randomly rent electric bikes and tour a city. Like no one was doing those things, or go shark diving, just putting that out to the universe. That's one of my things that I really want to do that's still on the bucket list, but they weren't really doing that. So I feel like over the time period of being an entrepreneur, what I've really landed on for me is that it's really important to create that community, because I didn't have it. I didn't have it for a long time. I had parts of it, but my entrepreneurship journey got a lot easier when, probably about 6 months ago, I chose to lean into community in a really big way. Myself and my husband joined a mastermind with Brendan Bouchard, which is really cool. And that really has changed a lot of how I see things, but also how I see business. And I think that if we have more community, especially female entrepreneurs, because we really thrive in community. That's like, if you look back, we're the ones that were sitting around the fire. We were either dancing around the fire or we were sitting around it. And we were the ones that learned how to communicate. So we could say, don't eat that berry, it's poisonous. So it's so interesting to me that entrepreneurship seems like a very lonely pursuit when it's absolutely not. So I feel like that's where my journey has led me to now, where I would definitely still call myself a coach, but I would also call myself a networking expert and a community founder. And that's what I do now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so many things. I just love all of that. And I love your story. I also like when you talk about like how much you charged for yoga, right? And I think, and this is like a yoga community thing, at least what I saw when I was in yoga teacher training, as well as when I was teaching teachers to teach yoga, right? So I facilitated yoga teacher training. So many places put these people up on pedestals, but then told everyone who was learning from them, like, no, you must only charge a pittance compared to what I charge, because it's giving back to the community, which could be noble, it could be cool, but also like, if that's what you want to do, you need to charge your worth. You need to understand what that is. And that's something that I brought into my teacher training, was helping them learn like what is the price that I need to charge for what I want to be doing. So I think, it's always interesting to me when people bring that up, because it's so common, right? To be like, yeah, I was only charging like $5 or £7 or whatever that was. So, but then like realizing your growth, right? Like as you went through that journey, the growth, I think that's just so cool, so awesome. And I love that your journey out of corporate was so different than mine, right? Like that makes me so excited to know that like not everyone rage quits.
Well, I think it's really important, because I think that people don't speak about it as much.
Right.
Because there's not a dramatic story. And this is something that I see in entrepreneurship as a whole, is that we all have to have this story.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be so terrible and
Right.
dramatic and awful. And it's almost like, how can you craft your story to be worse? Because then people will see, oh, if they did it, then of course I can do it. And it's like, do you know what? There are normal people that liked their jobs that thought they'd like being an entrepreneur a little bit better. And I think that is more relatable across the board.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And I
I
think
think if it's
that's
authentic to you, like your
right.
rage quit, totally authentic to you,
Right.
totally
Yes.
authentic.
Well, and if we're getting into human design, like as a manifesting generator, I was so bored in that. And so like it was time for me to move on, right? But I also love what you talk about when you talked about community, because I think entrepreneurship, and I know I've felt it, right? I've been an entrepreneur for 16 years. 6 of those years I was in corporate, but like when I left my corporate job, I was so lonely. I left that job and then I had no friends because all of my friends worked in corporate, or all of my friends wanted to be down at the bar and I didn't want to, right? And I had started discovering yoga and I'd started teaching and I was like, I like what these people are doing a lot more. Like, yeah, I want to go to Bali. I want to go travel. I want to go do all this fun stuff, go to these conferences, get hyped up, and then like go and take action. Like, that sounds more fun to me than like going to the bar. And, and it was that was the hardest transition out of corporate and into like entrepreneur, like solo entrepreneurship was like, who am I going to hang out with? Because nobody understands me. And, like, so understanding where to find my tribe, like where to find my little village of like support, that took me a long time. I mean, that probably took me probably until like, I would say it was like 2017 or 2018. So after I had my daughter, right, when I was kind of like forced to then ask for more help because I needed help caring for her during the day. So like I mean there were many yoga classes where she was like strapped to me, like I was carrying her around because I didn't have another choice. And yes, that is great, but also like I felt very lost, right? I felt very like overwhelmed and like I didn't know how to like ask for that community support until one day I said, I need help. I need someone to watch my daughter for an hour while I teach a yoga class. I can't bring her with. Um, and that's really where I kind of started forming my community. And I mean, just being in some of your community events, like I love being like the vibe is so high. Everyone's so friendly. It's so easy to like, you have an amazing way of like creating a way to like engage and make friends without it being like, hi, like awkward, right? It's not awkward. And I think that is so amazing.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
actually think I'm a pretty awkward human being, so that was nice to hear.
I mean, I think we all have our like awkward tendencies, right? So it's kind of like, who can I be with? Like, who can I be around who's also like equally as like awkward as me and like not afraid of being awkward?
I think I just like work on the basis that everyone is their own brand of weird. Like
Right.
everyone's weird in some way. And the person on the other end is just a human being. And I think that actually what taught me that was sales. I
Mm-hmm.
think sales was my biggest lesson in that because when I started doing sales, so essentially when I left my corporate job, I actually landed a role in the life coaching course that I had been a part of. She was like, "We need another coach. Will you come in?" And I was like, "Thank God." I was like, "The universe, she like God, she is a woman." I was like, "Yes, please." I was like, "Please save me," because I had my own clients, but that was not like it was enough for me to leave my job. It wasn't enough for me to thrive and do all the things I wanted. So I was like, "Yes, I would love that." And in that role, I got to see $1 million a year business run by two people.
Yeah.
And then it became four of us. And then there was a sales team, and the sales team could make it work. So then we were the sales team. And it was insane. because I think I had lived in this bubble of my coach for the longest time. And my coach no longer coaches. I would shout out her programs to the end of the earth. But um, I thought that she was like the biggest coach in the world. Like I just assumed like she was the next Tony Robbins. I was like, I know it. Like I 100% she is. And then I would call people and we had to cold call people like old school on the phone.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, who? And I was like, you don't know what? Like, you need to know this person. So I think that a lot of that tact probably came from trying to bring people on team, like trying to make people understand what it is that we do, what they had bought into, how we could transform their life, really actually helped me with those moments that feel awkward to other people. I'm just like, this is not as awkward as a sales call where they don't know who you are. They don't know who, like, they, first of all, they don't know that you're the person they even say that you are because you're like, I just work for this person.
Right.
They have no idea how you've got their number. They have no idea who the coach even is most of the time. And you're like, so do you want to pay me like $5,000 right now over the phone? Because we've had a really good 30-minute conversation.
Right.
So I think that nothing is as awkward as that. But I'm like, the rest of it is joy. And especially with the networking events, as they've grown, we attract repeat women, we attract repeat customers coming in. And I think that's great because as the person on the other end, it gives me always a place to go.
Mm-hmm.
There's always someone that I can ask something really personal that makes them feel at ease. And then everyone else is like, oh, she knows like so much stuff about the people that come. And it's like, yeah, because one, I know those people, or two, I've seen your social media profile. And if you don't think that I'm looking at that before we get on a call, like, well, how do you think I'm running my business? Like,
Right.
I need reminders everywhere. I'm like, squirrel, like I need reminders. So so yeah, I think that's something that actually massively helped. And I think as well, I'd love to come back to just really quickly when you said you need to learn how to charge your worth, because I think this is a sales issue. Um, something that I really wanted to share because this was a huge game changer for me, because I don't believe that, I think that everyone is worth, like, is priceless. Like I don't think we have a worth.
Right.
And I think that something that really helped me to make that transition, because I was hearing a lot about charge your worth. And I believe that what you mean by charge your worth is like charge for your time because you deserve it, because you're a business person. So I
Yes.
don't think that it becomes this like existential crisis of like, am I worthy? Like I don't feel that from you. But
Right.
I think that's how it can sometimes be perceived. And a way that one of my coaches puts it is he says, don't confuse internal insecurities with market realities.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of the market reality for, if we come back to a previous point, yoga is like, come to my free yoga class. It's been free for 50 years. And
Right.
like, I love doing this, even though I hate my corporate job, that I only work so that I can actually deliver these classes because I can't charge more. I think that's a problem. But also, I think that you have to look at the upper tier of the market and like,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that they're doing? Why is it that they get to charge X amount? And I think there's always going to be someone charging less than you for what you're doing. And there's always going to be someone charging more. So I always just think, look at the people that are charging more and what are they doing? And typically they're doing less.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I mean, really, like when it comes down to a yoga studio, if a yoga studio is charging more, their rent is honestly probably more, right? Like that's probably it, right? So it comes down to like those overhead expenses. But yes, I agree. Like the charging your worth for me is definitely like I had a coach give me basically a math problem that says, okay, you want to make this amount per year. Here's how much you need to make per month. Here's how many like sales you need to make per month. Here's how many people you need to talk to per month. And that's what I have run a lot of my clients through, right? Like going through that exercise to say, okay, you want to make an extra $1,000 a month. Great. That's $12,000 a year. How can we set you up in a way like what do you want to offer that can get you to that level without burning you out, without you being on 15 calls per week, just trying to make a sale, right? Like, how can we make this easy, simple, and sustainable for you?
Oh, Maggie, that is everything. You just said everything anyone needs to know about entrepreneurship right there. How can you do this in a way that's not going to burn you out? Because I think people will do that math problem and then wonder why it's not working. And
Yeah.
then they're like, oh, it's because I've set myself up for 15 calls with people and I don't know how to get those 15 calls.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
think that's where like the real challenge comes from is they don't drill the numbers down enough to see what is the actual actionable things that I know I can meet, irregardless or irrespective of everything else. Because
Right.
then everything else should like fall into place if you do that first action. But quite often, and I see this, I actually went to a coaching summit recently where they broke this down. And my husband looked at me and he was like, you know, babe, this is so easy. And I was like, it's easy when you look at that
Mm-hmm.
because they're saying to make, I think it was to break your first 6-figure year, they break it down in a series of like, you need to have a membership making this much, a course making this much, and one-to-one making this much. And then they broke it down if you just wanted to do one aspect and all the things. And the numbers worked, but there was never a point where they looked at past the numbers of people that you get in the door. So there was
Right.
never like, how many sales calls do you need for this one to convert? Or how many ads do you need to spend money on? I know nothing about ads. No one ever asked me. But like, how many ads do you need to convert to this amount of sales? Like, no one spoke about that part. And I was like, it looks really easy from the outside when you just look at the top of the funnel. But if you actually look that level deeper, what is manageable for you so that you don't burn yourself out? I think that was gold, a golden nugget. Like, if you're taking notes,
Yeah.
underline.
Yes, absolutely. And I will also say, like, if you're curious about that, like that's what I offer alignment sessions for, and they're free, is to go through like deeper than this, like the successful sales call. Like, how do you know how many people you need if you want to book 2 clients per week, which sounds super easy, but you have a 20% conversion rate. So for every 10 people you talk to, 2 of them convert. Well, you have to have 10 successful calls that want to get on a call. And then a step further back from that is like, okay, so I need 10 calls. And then, what's 20%? What would 20%? Is that like, we'll say 50, but you have to have like 50 conversations to get 2 people to sign up. Right. And I think that is what gets lost in the coaching industry, right? Like that's where people struggle. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I could talk all day about that because I love drilling down into those details, but to also like make it accessible for people and successful, right? So people are like, oh, it doesn't have to be that scary. But so I know you touched a little bit on some of the like challenges you've overcome in your business, but do you feel like one stands out? And I would love to know like what is that challenge that you overcame and like how did it affect your business? And this could be recent, it could be in the past, but like what's something that stands out for you?
The biggest mistake I've ever made in my business was being on my own for so long. That is the point blank, the single biggest mistake I've ever made. And it's something that I am trying to rectify now. And I think as well, maybe this is like my hindsight, and I don't know that you can maybe understand this from someone telling you, but something at the beginning of my business is I wasted a lot of time on things I thought I needed. And that was absolutely not accurate. I think that you have to have enough self-awareness to understand what is the kink in the hose, like what's the problem. And I think I spent a lot of time looking at other external things and not focusing on what is it that I actually need to do today to convert to sales.
Mm-hmm.
And my first month in business, so I left my corporate job and then I left the coach that I was coaching with, as well as I had like a few clients on the side. But my first full month in my own business, I hit a 10K month. And I know that's not normal for everyone, but you have to remember, and I think this is something that people probably need to hear. My first 10K month, I had a room of high ticket buyers already that wanted to work with me, that my coach was going to another level and doing something totally different. So there was a whole room of people that I just contacted and I was like, my first program's $2,000. And they were like, okay. And I was like, okay. And that was really easy because they'd just paid $10,000 for something else.
Right.
So I was like, they've got a bargain. I am like hitting a 10K month straight away. I was like, this is the dream. So I think people need to hear, like, when you first start out, it seems like, oh, that was like so easy. You just like, it just like fell out of the sky. No, I was in a really prime position.
Mm-hmm.
But to make the original point, which I will remember in a moment, it's gone out my brain. Refresh my memory. You were asking about my biggest mistakes. And then I was talking about not getting help earlier. And then, yes. So then after that, I was focusing on how to make my programs better. And I wasn't necessarily focusing on how do I keep this money coming in. I was focusing on all different things. I was focusing on how do I do social media 2 to 3 times a day. And that didn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
If I had continued those relationships with the people that were in the high ticket room, and if I'd focused on referrals, I think things would have been a lot easier.
Yeah.
But I didn't do that. I focused on what anyone on the internet was telling me I had to focus on. You need a low ticket product that like is an ebook and people can buy it all the time and you just like will make millions. That was the first course that I bought. Literally, I bought a business academy course that same month as I like made that money and was bringing people in. I bought this business academy course and it was like how to sell like low ticket e-products. It was such a bad decision. So I'm just going to frame this. I love how you're like, what's your challenges? I'm like, these are all my biggest mistakes. Don't make them. But I just actually came off a call with a client and I was like, I asked the question, oh my gosh, let me get it up. I asked the question, if you could ask entrepreneurs a few steps ahead of you anything, what would you ask them? And she was like, I mean, I would ask them, how did you do it? And she was like, and I would also ask them, what were the biggest mistakes that they made? So that's probably coming into this call as well, but that's okay. But yeah, those would be my biggest mistakes. I did it alone for too long and I didn't have the self-awareness to say, I'm going to stick with one thing. I was very much like, I know that you're a manifesting generator, as am I. I was very much, I want to be in everything. And I think that's really set me back in my business. And I would go as far as to say, like, those have been my biggest mistakes so far, and I'll continue to make mistakes, and that's okay.
Right. Yeah, but I think, I think having the awareness around it, and also like, and my hope for anyone listening to this interview is that, you see that even when you're in business and you've been in business for a while, like, we still make mistakes. Like, everyone is going to make mistakes. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be things that come up that you're like, thought it was a good idea, actually wasn't. Right. And I think having that awareness, it helps you get out of that loop of like, oh, here I go again. Right. And, I can really resonate with a lot of what you're saying because I have also made and bought some of those things where it's like, yeah, I probably didn't need that. I probably needed to look inside more. And like, how can I have a conversation today that will move into a potential sales call tomorrow, right? Like, what is something actionable I can do right now that will move forward? And I think a lot of people don't know what those action steps are. And, for me as a business coach, that's what I like to help people do is realize like, what are actions you can take that will get you talking to your ideal client? Because the more you talk to them, the more opportunities you're going to have to say, oh yeah, I do that. And I do that. And I help with this and I help with that. And pretty soon people are like, what don't you do? I love it. Okay. So what is one business tip that you would tell someone who is either starting their journey or maybe they feel like stuck in the chaos of business right now?
Find friends.
That's
legit it.
Yeah.
I think that like, because, and also be very strategic with when you ask for support. So if you've got something coming up like a sales call, schedule in to speak to one of your friends after that, like one of your entrepreneur friends that knows you've been on a sales call, that can either scrape you up off the floor and be like, you're amazing, you're great, keep going. Because if you're at the beginning, then the easiest time to kill anything, this is morbid, but is in its infancy, is when it's a baby.
Right.
So if your dream is just a little baby and someone comes along and says your dream sucks and squashes your little baby, then of course you don't want to keep going. So if you strategically place those friendships in spaces where you're actually going to need support, not only is that going to help you, but it also helps your friendship develop.
Mm-hmm.
So have those people in the room to scrape you up or to celebrate with you when you get the highs and when you get the excitement, because something that I found is there is nothing sadder than when you hit something really big. So the first month of my business, when I hit 10K, 10.4 in the UK. So it was actually over 11 in the US, just saying. Really proud of it still. But the first time you'll always remember it. But you know what's so interesting is that I did that day, I had closed cart. So no one else could come into my program. My program was starting legit the next day. I called my parents and I was like, I've just made £10,000. And my parents were like, what the fuck? Like they just were just like so flabbergasted. They were like, what have you done? How like, how did you get people to give you money? But yeah, and then after that, I hung up the phone and I had no one to share it with. And I
Mm-hmm.
just cried. I
Right.
was in like a new relationship at the time. So my husband now was there to celebrate with me the next day. But at the time I was really alone and I was still in that phase of like I didn't want to call him and be like, hey, I just made all this money. Like that would be
Right.
weird. So I just sat and I was like, oh, it was almost like that moment where I believe it's in Miss Americana. I love Taylor Swift. And she's like, I had no one that I climbed it with. And that line always stood out to me because I was like, that's exactly how I felt in that moment. I had no one I climbed
Mm-hmm.
this with. I am so alone. I have all this money. And I was like, I thought there was going to be something shiny on the other end. Like I thought there was going to be something. Like I was going to be so proud of myself or whatever. I thought there was going to be something that was going to change. And I was like, oh, nothing changed. I just have more money.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And I think that like when you have people around you to celebrate, it helps because you actually really celebrate that. You're like, I have more money. More money is amazing. But in that moment, I was like, oh, I don't feel any different.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I really thrive off of with my friendships is like being able to share in those wins.
Yeah. I love that. I love that so much. And I think it's so important to, when you find those people that you can, like, you have an amazing sales call and you can hop on, or you have a crappy sales call and you hop on with them and you're like, I just need to tell someone about this who is going to like understand what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's so important. Okay, so my last question of the interview is, if you were a kitchen utensil or gadget, what would you be and why?
I would be a shark shaped cookie cutter because it's the favorite thing I have in my kitchen. I love cookies and I love sharks. So probably that. Or anything that you could use to bake a pumpkin pie. I love pumpkin
Oh,
pie. That would also work. Or a potato masher. I love mashed potatoes. Oh my God, no, it'd be a potato masher. I love mashed potatoes so much. So many things. I love food, but if I had to choose one, I use the potato masher more often than the cookie cutter, even though the cookie cutter is really cool.
I love it. I love that. I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for being on. I will drop all your links below, but go ahead and tell people how they can connect with you and any freebies that you've got.
Absolutely. I think probably my biggest freebie is come and join our network. It's almost like an initiation process. Come to one of our calls, see if it's a vibe. And the great thing about our calls is if you come along, then you get added into our network, which means that that call will be sent to you as a replay, as will all subsequent calls. The subsequent calls that get sent to you also have a list of opportunities of female entrepreneurs that are potentially looking for your service, could benefit from your support. You could benefit from theirs. And that's really, really powerful. So I would say come along to one of our CEO crowd networking events, and that's how people can connect with me at the CEO crowd on Instagram. If you are looking for a community, if you've been inspired by talking about friendship and you're looking for that, then I do offer the CEO crowd membership as well. But you can come along to one of our events and hear about it, or just drop me a DM and I'll tell you anything you want to know.
I love it. Thank you so much. This has been so great. I can't wait for everyone to listen.
I'm so excited. Thank you for having me, Maggie. I really appreciate it.
Wow, what a great interview. Thank you so much for showing up here on the Chaos to Clarity podcast. Again, my name is Maggie. I'm so excited to connect with you. You can find all of the information, all of the links below in the show notes for today's interview. And I hope you have the best day ever.